we are calling a family meeting. It's an important family meeting because some of y'all have asked, what is the status? And I say some of y'all, I got a text message actually on the way. We're in New Jersey, so on the way to New Jersey, I had somebody reach out and was like, "Hey, what you know about Biola? Like, what's going on?" And I was like, I don't really know. Like, I know some things, and so let me think about that, and I'll get back to you. But then there was a tweet from the auntie Elisa, and her and Krista had some back and forth about
and now we have to talk about
and now and about Biola, and now I feel like we are asking questions.
We have questions. This is really in the spirit of we've been talking about Biola for several years now, and what concerns we've had, and as Biola grads, this is all like sort of our love letter to the Biola administration. Please stop. Please turn back. And things have made some changes. Some changes have come, but we still have questions. And so this is going to be our question. So if you're thinking about not just Biola, but any Christian school, are we going to listen to that air conditioner?
Probably. Oh, Auntie Elisa, she said we have questions. The auntie, we got questions.
I have questions.
We have questions.
Biola is we're looking at Biola as a case study because we both graduated from Biola. Between us, we have 4 diplomas from Biola. We love Biola. We have faculty that are connected to us, people that we love. We're not here to say that like every Biola professor is suspect, but we do have questions about some of the administrative policies.
So today,
some of the student life policies.
Today, we were.
I gotta set the context.
Girl, we can't be here all day.
Okay,
they're gonna come in our room to clean in a minute.
I know.
So look, I don't know how this
even can't touch that.
I don't even know how this got started. I was just an innocent bystander driving the car while Krista and Elisa were having a bit of a text back. I mean, Krista texting vigorously, and I'm like, who you talking to that you got a text like this and gasp and all that? And so she said, I'm texting Elisa. And I was like, oh, what is up? And so then she read me. You got to read it.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're a parent at Biola, or you're applying to Biola, your kid's applying to Biola or any Christian college, like one of the things they're going to do is they're going to like say, hey, look at our statement of faith. Everything is copacetic. We have this great statement of faith. Okay. And here's Biola's little statement of faith page. Okay. So we're going to scroll down real quick and we're going to see their statement on marriage. And it's all very orthodox. It's awesome. God created male and female to flourish in community. God designed marriage. One man, one woman. Marriage is a blessed union. Like, this is all boilerplate, standard Orthodox Christianity. Okay. Mm-hmm. So everything is good. We have a really good, solid foundation. But then here's the tricky part, is building policies on top of the doctrinal statement. And we see this
the way that we actually walk it out.
Yeah, so it's the difference between orthodoxy
and orthopraxy.
What you believe and how you live.
Yeah.
And we talk about this with Christian schools all the time, is like, hey, here they'll tell us, here's our statement of faith, we're solid, but okay, how do we live it out? Here's our policies. All right, so let's look at some of these policies. So here is what kind of jumped out at us today. And then Elisa texted or tweeted about it. So these are the policies at Biola. It's called Biola's position, and it's a public document, so we're not doing anything secret. Biola's position on sexuality.
It's not going to be public after today.
Yeah, they'll probably take it down after this.
That's funny. But keep going.
But all right, Biola's
people wondering like what we doing
on sexuality and relationships. Okay, so good. We believe sexual activity outside of marriage or behavior is fine, or is like that statement is good. Like, we shouldn't be doing that. God's intention for sexual expression is in marriage. All right. So then we get to this. We believe God created all things, is very good, except in some unique cases, our sex as male and female is a biological given of the individual human person from conception, made manifest at birth, and is a stable characteristic of the person determined by God's creational intent. Each person was intended to experience congruence between the physical and experiential dimensions of sexuality. Okay, I generally agree with that. Because of sin, our sex and gender as experienced as men and women is not always our sex and gender as God the Creator intended. And immediately I have a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they using the word gender?
Because
like gender's not a thing.
It's the word that the culture is using.
But it's not a thing.
Gender is what happens in the mind.
Yeah. So explain the difference from the world's perspective.
Sex would be your organs. Sex is what you see on the outside. It's your what you're made up of. But your gender happens in your mind, the way that I feel, the way that I think, the way that I perceive myself. That's gender. And those things can be in conflict with gender dysphoria. I might have been born a woman, but I think I'm a man. And so that's where this concept of gender comes from, and the idea that they may not match.
So sex and gender, already the wording here to me is a red flag, because it's borrowing from the critical feminist theory.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, all right, this isn't horrible, but it's, for me, I'll call it yellow flag. It's like,
okay,
I'm like, I'm not sure about that. All right, now we get to student care and conduct. We recognize it is healthy for students to process their sexuality and gender as part of their growth and development, and we provide spaces for healthy conversation. So they're sticking with sexuality and gender. I have all of these yellow flags about this at this
Because what
point.
does it mean to process your gender, like,
or your sexuality?
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, I think there's room here to look at what does it mean beyond, like, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to, grow into womanhood and things like that? That statement just seems a little sticky to me.
Yeah.
But we can keep going.
All right. We also recognize that Biola's view of sexuality and gender, there's that phraseology again, raises unique questions and challenges for those who experience same-sex attraction, experience dissonance between biological sex and gender, or identify as LGBTQ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Like some outsiders may have questions about that. I could see. We commit to support, and this is where it really started falling in the ditch for me. We commit to support and learn from one another in grace and truth, respecting each other's dignity as God's image bearers, while also honoring God's intentional design.
As such, when joining the Biola community, students agree to refrain from engaging in behaviors of romantic relationships that are inconsistent with Biola's position on marriage. So a number of things kind of catch me off guard here. We commit to support and learn from one another in grace and truth. I think, first of all, looking at the fact that their position on sexuality and gender raises unique questions and concerns. Sure, I can think of, well, yeah, people in the outside, the culture, who are not, part of the Biola community, may not understand why we take this position on sexuality the way that we do, or on sex and, marriage the way that we do. But then it quickly seems like what they're talking about is those inside of the institution, the students there. And so how are we going to have these conversations while we are learning from students who may be experiencing gender dysphoria or part of the LGBTQ plus community? My question is, well, what objective truth do I have to learn that scripture doesn't speak to in regards to sexuality?
What would I be learning exactly? Like, Well, first of all, I have questions about somebody who's coming into a Christian university, which Biola is, at least when I was there, like we had to, the students had to sign a statement of faith. We had to sign a code of conduct and all of that. But if I was going to Biola and actively identifying as a queer person, I would have a lot of questions about why that person as a Christian is identifying as a queer person.
I think there's a number of reasons why people would go to Biola and identify as queer. I think one, parents may just send their kid hoping to, put their kid on the straight and narrow by sending them to an institution that they believe is Christian that would then help their children to process and get them on the straight and narrow. But then two, there's also an idea of how do we usurp the institution? So how do I go there, place myself there, and then be able to help change policies and things like that? I don't think that's new or now I don't think that that's very radical in thinking. But then three, I think that there are people who would say, well, I can be queer for Jesus. I can be a queer Christian. And so being in the institution of Biola, especially something like this, we're going to learn and process together. We're going to help you understand your gender and sexuality and all of that. Well, this is a welcoming community. I mean, that's what it seems like to me.
But I just have so many questions about this because, well, what would they be learning from a queer person? Like, what objectively would they be learning? Now, maybe we could listen to somebody struggle. All right, I could see that, or trying to help support somebody who's in the struggle. But if they're actively identifying as a queer person, I would be like, maybe this school isn't for you.
Well, I would say that the idea that if you actively identify as a queer person, we've really lost the plot. And your understanding of Genesis is way off. There's a lot of understanding that's way off. And what type of Christianity do you hold? Maybe you're holding to a progressive form of Christianity, and maybe Fuller is better for you.
I don't know.
Maybe
it's
Azusa
confusing.
Pacific is better for you.
And
but this has not been. I mean, maybe it was like I had gay friends when I was at Biola, but I don't.
But we didn't have we weren't cultivating a
transgender statement.
Cultivating a community of like, oh, we want to listen and learn,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
This wording of sex and gender, though, that's
Mm-hmm.
very troubling to me.
I think it is. I think it is as well, because it acknowledges
categories that are invented.
Yes.
These are not real categories,
Mm-hmm.
or not biblical categories.
Sex is gender,
right?
Yeah,
but they're from psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So all right, let's keep going. All right, so as such, when joining the Biola community, students agree to refrain from these behaviors. We also ask that transgender individuals refrain from.
Well, hold on, because that means that we are allowing transgender individuals into the community.
Apparently.
Yeah. So I wonder if that is, and this would be a question to ask is, well, are we allowing transgender students into the community who at the time of acceptance say, I am transgender, but I will uphold your position on marriage and will not participate romantically? Or are these people who come out during their process time at Biola?
Or are they people that are saying, hey, I'm in the struggle.
Exactly.
But I'm trying to repent and grow and in my sanctification and everything. But if somebody is like actively transgender, I just have questions like, why would that person even be a student at Biola? Like, why would they be let in? Why, as part of the application process?
Because they aren't in line definitely with orthodoxy.
But anyways,
but yeah, we can go on.
All right, refrain from the process of medical transition during their time at Biola. So then that raises a question for me of, okay, if they're only going to, if the main requirement is they're not engaged in romantic relationships, but they can still be transgender, but they can't medically transition, then can we have dudes in dresses? Like,
that's a whole nother conversation for later.
But that was my immediate question is, are we going to allow dudes in dresses? Because they're not medically transitioning. And okay, so that's a question that I have. Students who choose to engage in such behaviors or relationships will be referred to the Department of Student Care, which manages student adherence to Biola community standards.
So, okay, what were you going to say about that?
No, go ahead.
Sorry. My issue with this is that who are the people in student care? Who are these people? Because what I think Biola is consistently showing us, especially when we were doing the stuff when we were writing back in 2020, 2021, there are people in like student housing. One of the guys from student housing had posted transgender women during Women's History Month.
Oh, yeah.
And so who are the people that you're giving the students over to help manage their mental health and care? Is it the same person who wrote this statement?
What kind of care would they get?
Exactly.
I would have a lot of questions.
What is that care?
What is that care? Mm-hmm. And are we only managing behaviors?
Yeah.
I have questions about that component, because what I don't see in here is like a lot of language about sanctification. It seems like very external of like, we're going to like, seems very side B kind of oriented of we're just managing the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's continue. We seek to be a supportive, developmental, and redemptive in the lives of the individuals involved. We will offer support. Again, I have questions. What kind of support? Resources, what kind of resources, and accountability to strengthen the students' ability to flourish within the Biola community. And again, I'm not talking about students who are in the struggle of gender confusion or in the struggle of same-sex attraction. Like, to me, that's different than some of this wording is like differentiating between sex and gender or actively calling them transgender. That's very troubling to me.
Yeah, there seems to be an intentionality behind the participation.
Yeah. Desiring to live in Biola-owned housing will be placed based on their sex at birth. Okay. However, as issues connected to sexuality and gender are complex and layered, and here again, now we're getting deeper into gender theory and touching on queer theory a little bit, and this is concerning. We will walk with students on an individual basis who identify as transgender or experience dissonance with their biological sex and gender to provide helpful support, arrive at decisions around facility use, and offer appropriate accountability.
What decisions do you need to arrive at regarding facilities use? Like, are you saying, okay, instead of having you room with another female because your sex assigned at birth is female, we'll put you in a single room? Or are we talking about, well, okay, maybe in this one instance, you can use the male locker room? Like, what assistance or what decisions around facilities need to be made?
So somebody's asking here about the application process at Biola. And I'm assuming that it's pretty much the same as when I went there, that it's not a missional school where it's evangelism, where students do not have to be
GCU.
Yeah, it's not where one of those where only the faculty are required to be Christians, but students can be anything. It's not like that. Biola has a very set standards of not only conduct, but also they have a doctrinal statement that the students must affirm. They have to provide their personal testimony. They have to double major in Bible. So this is not like, Grand Canyon University is a good example. That's more of a missional school where it's more evangelism focused. So the professors know that students will be self-identifying as a wide variety of worldviews, but they're coming to Grand Canyon University for, a Christian education. Biola is not like that. Biola requires its students to have a profession of faith and adhere to a doctrinal statement and all of that. So their operating assumption is that you are coming there with a Christian testimony and perspective.
I think this is a great question we should come back to. I want to finish this first.
Okay.
Because I think you can answer that as a parent who sent your kid to Biola. So, yeah.
But yeah, I just have questions because Oh, I mean, this raises, like, I can't imagine how they would work with an individual. Are they opening the door here for living in the girls' dorm, for a guy to live in the girls' dorm on an individual basis if he has his own room? And then
I think that they would say no. I mean, at least for now, to
I don't.
save face, I think
This
they
is
would say no.
vague.
It is super vague.
But I would, as a parent, I would ask questions.
Exactly.
Like, I'm thinking about Sigma Chi, for example, that has suites. There's
Mhm.
2 people in each room that has an adjoining bathroom
Yeah.
in between. Like, are they open to the, I mean, does this open the door of, like, well, if a guy who identifies as a girl could live in Sigma Chi on the girls' floor in a room by themselves and then
share the adjoining bathroom
because there's a locked door in between?
Yeah.
Like, is that what they're I would just have,
Could be. I'm gonna give Biola the benefit
these
of
are
the
the
doubt.
questions I would have as a parent.
Sure, I would too.
I would be going through this and just asking, like, what is this?
But I think too, and it says to offer appropriate accountability. How do we, at this point with Biola, I'm at the point of saying, how do we know how can we be sure that they understand what appropriate accountability is when we have consistently seen them go further and further and further down this road to the left, down this road of unorthodox orthopraxy? You know what I mean? Like, this is what happens when you, and I said this in the car, when you try to hold on to orthodoxy, like, yes, marriage is between one man and one woman, but you allow your orthopraxy to fly off the radar. We'll do this and we'll do that because we also want to appease the culture. And I think that this is a lot of what that is appeasing of the culture. Where is that dress statement that you found?
I'll get to it. Yeah. And then, due to the complexity of human experiences related to sexuality, gender identity, and same-sex behavior, same-sex attraction, and sexual orientation, these are all categories from the genderbread man.
Mm-hmm.
They've taken gender theory, queer theory, that we use in our talks all the time on queer theory,
and put it on their website.
Yes. This is the genderbread man. These are all the genderbread man categories and terminology that they teach 5-year-olds now in public school. They've imported this into their policies.
Yeah. And it's also very interesting to think about where this leads for people who may be confused on, is it okay to be same-sex attracted? Or, what does the Bible say about these things? And how should I think about these things? To me, if I was a young person, I'd be very confused.
I'd be very confused because there's this element of which it's inviting, it's saying, yes, come in, but I don't know how well they're discipling people. Like, if they're already conceding sex and gender is a thing, sexual orientation is a thing, which I don't think it is.
Gender, because sex is a thing.
Yeah, but gender, but separating them. Sexual orientation is a thing, which I don't think it's a thing, biblically speaking. I mean, people can be confused about it, but to say some sexual orientation, to me, I interpret that as being something that the world says is inborn, is fixed.
Yes.
Someone's asking, has Biola recently changed the wording on this policy? I don't know. I don't make a habit of reading Biola housing policies on a regular basis anymore. Since my kid doesn't go there. But yeah. All right. So one more thing, and then we'll jump off here, is the conversation about the transgender individuals must refrain from a process of medical transition. So that led me to a question of, like, well, are we going to have dudes in dresses? Is that what we're saying? I was just confused. So I found the dress standards policies, and so they want to cultivate wisdom and discernment. So they're not going to detail acceptable versus unacceptable dress
until they do.
This is neither feasible nor does it encourage wisdom or personal responsibility. We ask that you clothe yourselves literally and relationally in ways that communicate dignity, respect, self-awareness, and considers the well-being of others. Certainly, we expect our community to abstain from clothing that might be reasonably, I would have a lot of questions about the word reasonably, who's deciding reasonably, received as tasteless, hostile, slanderous, provocative, exaggerated, or persistent cross-dressing and are culturally appropriated ways that might be offensive. This feels so subjective to me.
Well, part of what, like, we can come back to the exaggerated cross-dressing and things, because that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But part of what I immediately think of when I read that was, it's going to be okay for somebody to wear a BLM shirt expressing their sorrow and grief over the Black bodies who are being targeted and oppressed. But if you wear a MAGA hat, you're going to be deemed a threat,
That's what I would want to
harmful,
know.
and toxic.
That's what I would want to know. That would be a question I would have
Yeah.
as a parent, is like, can my son wear a MAGA hat on campus? Is that going to be a problem? Or is that going to be considered hostile or provocative? Because how are we defining the standard of reasonably received?
Mhm.
And it might be offensive. If I have to dress in some way that that people might not be offended, I'm
Yeah.
not sure how I rise to that standard.
Yeah, because people can be offended over anything.
That seems so subjective
Yeah.
to me. But then there's this issue of persistent cross-dressing. I would have a question as a parent. So does that mean we can have dudes in dresses occasionally? Sometimes. So
I got a question.
I mean, what does persistent cross-dressing mean? I mean, even if we have occasional cross-dressing, if we have dudes in dresses occasionally, what is that, like once a month?
What
once
is
a week?
Exaggerated cross-dressing? Because it's exaggerated or persistent.
I guess drag maybe would be.
Well, if you cross-dressing, ain't you already in drag?
I don't know, but exaggerated.
That's what I want to know. I want to know what is exaggerated. But yeah.
And who decides that? Do they have a committee?
What is persistent? Like, it was like, well, I went on Monday, cross-dress.
So once a week, once a month?
I only go to every other class in drag. I don't know. I have questions.
So what is this culturally appropriated? Does that mean I can't wear a sombrero to class? What is that?
I don't know. You know, when I was at Biola, I had a guy, he was from Wisconsin, and he wore a cheese hat every day. I don't know. I don't know if that's cultural appropriation or not. But yeah, like, at what point do we not just say, you know what, we are now just adopting the ideas of the world and we're bringing them into Biola, and because we want to, be culturally nuanced, or we want to have these winsome convictions, we're gonna participate like the world.
I don't know. I don't want to assign motives, but I do have a lot of questions. Before I paid $40,000 of my hard-earned dollars a year to send my kid to Biola, I would want to sit down with these policies and be asking some dean a lot of questions.
What does this
mean? What can my student expect in the dormitory, in the residence life? And we've been saying for years that the progressive policies generally come in first through residence life. Mm-hmm. And I think that this kind of is bearing that out a little bit. But I just have so many questions, and I don't want to say like, it does seem like whoever wrote these policies, I'll just talk for the person that wrote the policies, and somebody adopted the policies and said yes to them.
Somebody signed off on it.
Some supervisor, some dean somewhere signed off on these policies. And before I sent my kid to this school or any school that had policies like this, I will want to know, the person that wrote these policies has been shaped by gender theory. This person has been shaped by critical feminist theory. Mm-hmm. This is where they are getting these ideas. To some degree, they have dipped their toe into queer theory.
Girl, we up to our knee. Dip their toe, please. No.
But and again, this isn't disparaging of like each and every professor at Biola. We have friends there, but
we got to push back, y'all. Like,
I have questions. There's a little downgrade happening here.
Mm-hmm. And I was telling Krista earlier, like, if this was at a secular university, I might not be upset.
We wouldn't be doing a live
because the
about
culture is gonna cult. You can expect this, and to some degree, I think sending my Christian child to a secular university with the expectation, having grounded them in the reality that this is sin, that we know who we are, your identity is in Christ, we don't participate in all of that. Hey, now we're gonna have conversations. I wouldn't allow my child to live on that campus probably, but I bring them home. But at a Christian university,
where
now,
there's telling you,
yeah,
we accept only Christian students.
mhm.
This is not a missionary university.
Yes. And that as we are living out Christ and all of these things, now it's not only the fact that they're being exposed to these things, but they're being exposed, and these views really are not being challenged. Like, let's be honest. That's not what they're getting when they go to Biola. They're not getting like, oh, this is a possibility. Like these are ways that we think about this, but what does the historic Christian worldview say? Yeah.
This is concerning. And I want to give Biola the benefit of the doubt. And again, this is always our love letter to them of like, please look at this again, reconsider your wording. You might not know this, but this is straight out of critical feminist theory. This is wording right out of queer theory. And I don't know who advised you on this, but I want to make sure donors and alumni are aware that this is what's happening. And so if you're like me, you're a second generation Biola person and you're sending your kid into this, informed consent, because the school will show you the statement of faith where everything is orthodox. Everything up front looks good. They are ready for you to write a check. But I want parents to have informed consent. I want donors to have informed consent about what's happening. And this wording is at best concerning, and at worst is something else entirely.
Yeah. I don't know. I was going to say something, but it'd be a little too rough. So I'm just going to refrain.
Okay. But again, this is questions to ask of any Christian school that you're interviewing for your kids. Anything like that, you want to be in those conversations to figure out like, hey, where do you stand on this? How do you handle housing? What is it that what kind of quote unquote support are you offering these people? What is your policy about X, Y, and Z
enrollment
thing?
Who are the students that get to come to Biola?
Yeah.
And what happens if someone were to come out as transgender or queer? How does the institution of Biola work with that student, especially if that student is not struggling but unrepentant and hardened in their position that, no, this is who I am, this is what I do, my parents send me here, and so
because that's the confusing part, is when we add Jesus to it, it sends a message to the students that this is just part of discipleship, And all right, we're going to jump off here. I do want to let you know about a resource that Natasha and I have had some back and forth about. It's a great resource. It's called the CAFF College Guide. And you can, once you set up an account, which I'll tell you is a little clunky to set it up, but once you set up an account on this very handy website, you can search for Christian universities on here, and it will rate them in all kinds of different ways according to tuition and programs and clubs and majors. But it'll also tell you about dorm life, student life policies related to DEI, equity, queer issues. So feel free to use this as a tool. It's free. Again, you do have to register on it and in order to access the list, but it's very interesting. And if you are looking for a Christian college, that would be a resource that I would point you to.
I do want to go back to that one question. I think it was from Ryan.
Okay.
because I think he had a good question, or a question that could be helpful in answer. I think that it says deeper questions. What is the purpose of Bible college seminaries? Is it equipping ministries? Is it providing Christian education, or definition of that? And then, is it to expose students to as many views as possible? And I was going to say you should answer that, since you sent two of your kids, not to Biola, one to another Christian institution. And so, how do you see the purpose of Bible college seminaries? And like, what was your purpose in making sure, because you guys were pretty, I feel like, pretty sure, like Bob is, so your oldest daughter is a third generation on Bob's side,
At
Biola student, second generation on your side. And so, what do you see as the purpose of
I think my mind has changed about this since we went through that process back in 2017. I think my mind has changed pretty significantly. I think if I had it to do over, I would do a lot of things differently. I'm believing in college in general less and less. And unless the student has a very specific vocation that they want to go into, like teaching or law or the medical profession, that like you must go to college. But if they're going to like be a communications major, or something more generic, I would say, like, or they're unsure, or they just want to be an interdisciplinary major, like, I don't know, like maybe explore some other options, explore trade school, explore some other things, explore helping them start a business. But I don't know if I would do it again the same way. I think, Future says, for $40,000 a year, I'm going to need them to define their terms. Exactly. That's why I'm doing this, is because I want people to have informed consent about how they're spending their hard-earned dollars. I think in general, what the Christian College Project was 100 years ago was to start an alternative to the regular university system. And so the rise of the Bible college movement 100 years ago, there's about 100 or so Bible colleges that started, and they were part of the mass exodus of conservative Christians at that time, called fundamentalist Christians, out of mainstream institutions. And so we started our own parallel institutions. And I've talked about this in other videos, but I'll put a link to it in the description. But basically what happened is that in the last 30 years, a lot of our Christian institutions now are recruiting and hiring people that have PhDs from secular institutions. So now they're bringing those secular ideas into our Christian institutions. And it is changing the way that Christian institutions are educating the next generation. And so if you want to expose students to as many views as possible, I would say send your kid to state school.
Yeah.
But I think that the Christian Project was to try to have an interdisciplinary approach to faith and education, which worked for a while. But I am a skeptic that it's working anymore, because so many of the people who now work in Christian higher ed got PhDs at secular schools, and they've been trained that way. And so they're bringing that mindset back into the Bible colleges and Christian schools, and it's having a certain watering down effect. So,
and I think a watering down effect is putting it mildly. I think it's very harmful to take very secular ideas like queer theory and gender theory and all of these, secular theories, and then baptize them in Jesus.
That's what I was trying to allude to earlier.
Not really giving kids a very solid foundation as to what do we believe as Christians. Like, what was one of those professors had that book where the Holy Spirit's like called a she.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Like, no, we need to understand what is the historic faith, how do we defend that faith once for all given to the saints? Now, these may be the world structures and systems and theories, but this is what scripture says, and this is how we live that out. We cannot bring our kids into Christian institutions, say that they're Christian institutions, but all they get is the world baptized in Jesus, because then when you want to hold to biblical values, then you look crazy. You look like the one who's way out in left field. This is why your child will go to a Christian institution, come home and be like, parent, I can't talk to you anymore because you're racist, or because you're sexist, or you're homophobic. Why? Because they were taught in their Christian institutions that this is the way that we engage.
We get letters like that all the time. All the time. And people don't believe us when their students are in high school. They're like, I'm going to send them to this nice Christian school. And we try to warn them. And they're like, no, not my kid. That's not going to happen. And here we are. And so it's in the Christian institutions. But if you use that tool, you can get some insight into what you're walking into. Go check out my webinar. I'll try to put some links in the description once we're off the stream for some additional resources. Okay.
Alrighty, with that, y'all, we out.
Remember, bye. Ask questions. It's a lot of money.
And quit supporting these institutions. That's the whole other thing. You know what? This ain't even about nothing else. But we continue to give our money to these institutions, but then we complain on the back end. So it's like we talking out of both ends of our mouth. It's just like the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl has Bad Bunny, and I know there's some pushback, and Bad Bunny might be canceled. But what I saw on my social media feeds was everybody talking about, well, don't watch I'm not going to watch any commercials during the Super Bowl. No, don't watch the Super Bowl. Cancel the subscription to ESPN or whatever it is that is going to air the Super Bowl, and let people know that you're serious. But instead, we want the both and. And sometimes you actually have to put your foot down and be like, I can't cross the line. The Super Bowl is let you know 1,000% that they don't want no conservative Christian there. You got a conservative value Christian, they don't want you there. But yet we continue to run to give our hard-earned dollar to people who hate you and the people who hate your God. But I'm just not going to watch the commercials. You don't use half the stuff the commercials sell anyway. So, but yet you're going to make sure that you watch the game. Sometimes you got to do the hard thing. Sometimes we have to buckle up and just do the hard thing. And nobody's going to want to hear it because the Super Bowl is the treasured event of the year and blah, blah, blah. I don't care. The same thing. Your kid want to go to Biola. Sometimes you might have to do the hard thing and be like, baby, I am not paying for you to go to an indoctrination camp in the name of Jesus.
Not to say that that's what Biola is.
Not yet. This is my personal opinion and question.
This is an opinion.
Question about what they're doing.
This is an opinion.
Yeah. Anyway, that's me. And if Biola would like to reach out and to give me some insight to help me understand how they are not, through their books that call the Holy Spirit she, through courses that teach that white people are privileged and oppressors and black people are, you want to give me some insight, then call me.
Or if you'd like her to speak at chapel.
They ain't gonna ask me to speak in chapel. They ain't gonna ask me. I'll be getting kicked off like them people did at that university.
You run a major Christian ministry.
They don't want me, and that's okay. I am not everybody's cup of tea. But what we ain't gonna do is sit around here and act like when the culture shifts and people are doing all kind of buck wild crazy things, like we gonna talk about it, one, but two, we can't just sit back and participate. And if we do participate and continue to fund these things, then we are getting exactly what we pay for, and we don't have no room to complain. Don't complain to me when, can you believe what they're doing at the Super Bowl?
This isn't about the Super Bowl.
We just not gonna watch.
Why are we talking about the Super Bowl?
Because that just irritated me when as I have seen so many people say
it's got nothing to do with
it. It did.
It's got nothing.
I made the 2 and 2 connect, and it equaled 4.
It's equaling 3. All right,
y'all. We out of here.
Ask questions. Just ask questions. That's the bottom line of this. I'm not saying too much about what Biola is doing. I'm just saying ask questions, have informed consent before you write checks.
Yeah.